Welcome back, everybody, to another exciting episode of Aaron's Opinion, the podcast for blind people, where we speak about critical issues in the blindness community and all other issues from across the universe and galaxy. Tonight, this morning, this afternoon, or this evening, whenever you're tuning into this, as we say in the business, it's always good to put a voice behind a name that I've been hearing about in a variety of lists all around the community for actually many years. I've always wondered, hey, who's that Noe Villeda guy? And then finally, I think it's that you liked a post, or I don't really know how I came in contact with you originally. I think you liked a post or interacted somehow, with what we're doing, right? And then the other thing is, so you're doing a lot of important work. You do a lot on various listservs. You work for the Department of Water. You have a lot of different experiences. So why don't I mute my microphone for a bit and you walk through your life story, answering the question, who is Noe Villeda? Go.
Hi there. To answer your question, the way I found you was through a podcast that you had done a couple of weeks ago with my friend Ron Clemens, and of course, a friend of mine, Dan Kenneth. So I have not heard Dan's podcast yet, but I did check out Rod's last week, and so just definitely enjoyed that, and figured I would reach out and introduce myself and see what Aaron's opinion was about. About myself in a nutshell, I'm pretty down to earth. Pretty much what you see is what you get. I'm originally from New York. I've lived all over the place, and I'm now living in Florida. And I have been in the customer service industry since 1999, working for different companies. And after graduating Florida State in 1998, I originally had graduated with a degree in visual disabilities and what they now are known as teachers for the visually impaired. Although when I was growing up, they were known as itinerant or vision teachers. I graduated and was looking for work and happened to find a customer service position with our local phone company and decided to give that a shot, and then just kind of branched out from there and decided to go into the field of customer service. And in terms of the lists, I've been on all different kinds of lists, from Apple to the list that is now, I say new because I think they've only been around for about a year, that deals with the new Meta Wayfarer glasses that are out, that are an extremely good benefit for those of us who are blind. Definitely promotes independence, and so I'm on all different listservs.
Excellent.
And yep.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say, and that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Very nice. Okay. And so what can you tell us, specifically? So you grew up in New York, right? So what can you tell us, by the way, about some of the experiences you had growing up in New York and things like that? New York, is an amazing place to be. It's an amazing place to grow up. I'm sure you had some really interesting experiences. And you've obviously, throughout your life, you've obviously thought a lot about society, considering that you wanted to be a teacher. So, try to give us more insight on that. What led you to believe that you wanted to be a vision teacher at first? And I think that's a great thing to do. So, talk more about your, earlier days growing up in New York and how it all led to your interest in education.
Well, when I was in New York, and here in Florida, I had some wonderful vision teachers growing up before I moved to New York in the 70s, probably 75, 76. I had a vision teacher who was very hands-on, and she was the type of teacher who, if you wanted to learn something, she would find a way to teach it to you. She would, take you horseback riding if you wanted to do that. If you wanted to, as an example, I have a friend who he and I went to school together. He was a couple of years ahead of me in school. And one day, he and this friend of ours, who was our teacher at the time, they were walking along the street, and there was I think they were doing sort of construction work or something, and she turned to the uh, foreman or whoever was working the construction site and said, "Hey, you know what? I have a student who's blind. Can I let him see the truck or the cement machines or whatever the equipment they had there to literally get a hands-on experience to see what that was all about?" And so very, very progressive for their time. And when I moved to New York, I had another teacher who was pretty much the same way. We would go out and we would do orientation and mobility in different stores in order for me to become you in order to be used to being around people as a you know totally blind kid, and just to be able to interact with other people, and vice versa, and just get different experiences. I remember we had a I was in must have been high school. We had a in one of my science classes. They were trying to teach the Punnett Square, and because it was so visual, what we did was we actually took a big piece of cardboard and made the squares out of string, and took coins where the quarter was the dominant gene, the dime was the recessive, and a dime and a nickel, oh no, a dime and a quarter together were the hybrid gene. And all I remembered was which quarter was which. I understood the theory behind it, but basically I just remembered what the coins represented, and they went out of their way to make something so visual, very tactile, in a way that I could understand it, enough to get through the test, pass the exam, and just so very, very progressive. So I would think that is what I would say that is what led me to want to go into education. That I had teachers that cared enough to go that extra mile. And both of these ladies I'm still in contact with over the years. We've still remain good friends. And now it's a lot different because you're in a more structured classroom setting, and you know times are just a lot different back then. But I would say just having the right teachers that wanted to help, and we're not afraid to go that extra mile and do whatever it took for you to learn the specific concept.
Yeah, that's everything. Yeah, absolutely. What decade were you in high school? Like what were the years? So obviously I'm younger than you. I was born in
Yes.
91. So what decade were you in high school?
I went to high school. I kind of moved around a lot. So my education in terms of the years of school kind of got messed up a bit. But I was in high school from 80, oh goodness, I'm gonna think now, 84 to 88. So,
Okay, good.
and yeah,
Excellent.
from there I moved to New York, or no, I moved back to Florida because I kind of lived all over the place. But when I was in New York, you had mentioned about the experiences in New York. New York is a great place. I agree with you. I lived about an hour and a half north of the city, and whenever I had the opportunity, I would remember going into the city, and I would just walk around and just checked out. I used to love to go into the record stores and find albums and LPs and singles, and just all kinds of different things. But check out the different restaurants. As a matter of fact, when I was in high school, I would go to the city every once in a while with some friends, and we remember going to see. As I had graduated high school, as a matter of fact, I think it was right after graduation. I remember going to go see Maureen McGovern in Carnegie Hall, which was incredible. I mean, the acoustics were just amazing, and I had always been a huge, huge, huge fan of hers growing up, and to actually see her live was just incredible. And then I had the honor of meeting her backstage, and she was the most gracious, very kind, very, very genuine. And I actually had the privilege to meet her a couple of other times in concert when she'd uh, come here to Florida and in New York, and she was, always very, very down to earth, very, very humble, very kind.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really, really great. Excellent, excellent. Yeah, so you were going to high school in a time when things were very different, from when I was in high school. About 20 years later, I was in high school roughly. So, very two very different time periods where in your time there was a lot of change and a lot of development in the 80s and 90s for sure. But you're very right. With teachers that care, that's what really encourages you. When people show you how much they care, you really notice. It's noticeable when people care about a product, whether it's teaching or a podcast. When people care, they care, and that's noticeable, and that says everything. So, really good, really, really interesting. Okay. And then what led you to so then how did you start getting into University of Florida and things like that? And then you started studying what is now called, vision, basically vision studies, right?
Correct. Right, correct. I started at Florida State from 94 to 98 and went through, different classes there. And Florida State was fun. Florida State was fun. Met a lot of friends. Actually had the really interesting experience of joining a co-ed service fraternity and got a chance to do a lot of work with them. We would do work with Habitat for Humanity, and during the holidays, we would go into a nursing home and, you know, spend time with the residents there and stuff. And, we would sing to them and just, basically just try to bring them a little, Christmas joy. And we had, oh, had the opportunity to just do different projects there. And so I decided to, pursue a degree in education. And when I graduated, I thought I was going to go into education, and then I was looking for work. And so when the customer service position came along, I just jumped on it and just went from there.
Sure, sure. Excellent. Really good. A lot of blind people, have excelled in customer service. So what exactly can you tell us about, customer service and the changes you've noticed in that industry? Customer service has changed a ton over the years. So talk about that. What did you do in customer service? And, yeah, tell us all about that.
I've worked for a couple different companies, from telecommunications to hotel reservations, and I'm now with our local water department. And yes, customer service has changed, but it's what I try to do is, you know, basically be patient, because with you get customers that are upset and customers that don't understand that you are mandated by certain policies that some things you have control over, some things you have no control over, and it's just a matter of just take each call as it comes and just roll with it. And it has changed because unfortunately now a lot of companies are outsourcing, which when you have a disability and you have someone from another country, they may not understand the obstacles that we face as blind people using voiceover, using JAWS, using magnification, using a screen reader. So that's sometimes a little challenging to try to get them to understand where okay, I'm sorry, I can't click on the little blue button to input the information, but depending on, like anyone, depending on the person, if they're willing to just kind of work with you, then it's just a matter of just trying to educate and just to let them know how to let's you know help us help you type of strategy where let me give you the information that I need to give you so that you can help me get through this.
Sure, sure. Yeah, over time, I've noticed being that I'm a bilingual person and so are you, I've noticed that being bilingual is actually more important than ever before. I was born in 91, as I said, and I was born during a time period where some people were believing that you only needed English, and then there were other people that were starting to notice the importance of bilingualism. And I'm led to believe, and I know that being bilingual is a really important skill set that people need to have. I recall that you studied French. I think that's something that we both enjoyed, that we both, I'm a French speaker and you studied French. In addition to the fact that you grew up speaking mostly Spanish, right?
Correct. Actually, Spanish was my first language.
Right.
Excuse me. Spanish is my first language. I actually learned English when I was about 6 or 7 at a school for the blind in New York. And, but ironically, I think in English. So I speak Spanish, obviously, and I can understand Spanish, but I'm like mentally translating it in my head. Just to, not that I can't follow it, but it's just a me thing. It's like, in English, I mean, I can have a conversation with you and, you know, I'll remember, 99.9% of it, give or take. I mean, as much as anyone, will. But my point is, what I'm getting at is I will retain it more in English than I do in Spanish.
Right. Right. That's interesting. Yeah. Probably it was that you were in a multilingual environment growing up and your brain just started doing the simultaneous translations. And that's probably what that was about. Yeah. Yeah. That's
Probably because growing up, I mean, for the most part, my parents did not speak English. So, they would speak to me in Spanish. But of course, when I went to school, that was primarily English. And then from there, it was 99%, English. And then, when I would go home, then it was, back to Spanish. So, you're probably correct on that one.
okay. Sure. Cool. And where are you from? Now, were you born here or were you born overseas?
I was born in New York. I'm the only one of us that was born in New York. My family is originally from Honduras. They all came to this country in, I think, June or July of '67. And then I was born a few months later, which was rather interesting because my parents had come here um, a few years beforehand and they started working and they were able to work and help other families come here and basically, have a better life. And then all my brothers and sisters were here. And then I was born and we all just stayed here.
Very interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Today, I don't know much about Honduras today. Being that I'm not a Spanish speaker, I don't know much about the Spanish speaking countries really. But it's interesting. Yeah. Have you been back to Honduras during your life many
I
times?
went when I was 10, when unfortunately I lost my mom there. And as a blind person, it
Hmm.
was very odd. And I understand now why it is, but I mean, back then as a kid, you're like, where am I and what's going on? Unfortunately, there is a lot of, and not in a bad way, but there is a lot of ignorance, and ignorance in the sense of truly just lack of education, not in any type of negative or derogatory way, but it's just literally just lack of education because
Yeah.
at that time, we're talking late '70s, it was, a bunch of small towns where clearly there had never been around a blind person. So, they would, clap your hands type thing. And, I would, of course, know exactly where they were, be able to, kind of listen for the sound. And they just thought that was amazing. Well, of course they would because, they didn't know any better. And as a kid,
Hmm.
you don't know how to educate somebody. You just go with it. So,
Yeah.
and I understand it now, but, at the time I was like, what in the world? So it was, and plus I had never been. I had never been. So it was definitely, it was an experience. It was an experience. I have not been back though. Most of my family is here. So I really have
Right.
you know, no reason to go. But,
Hmm.
it is a very poor country, unfortunately. There are parts of it that are, a lot more progressive. For example, in the capital, there is a section where it is a very much Americanized. They celebrate Fourth of July and Labor Day and American holidays and
Okay,
the whole nine yards.
that's just
Basically,
bizarre. That's
yeah, it really
bizarre.
is. Yeah, it is. And
Huh.
but it's
Hmm.
um, it's very nice. From what I've been told, visually they have a lot of there are a lot of cruise ships that go into the port in either in Honduras or Belize, and from what I understand, the scenery is just beautiful there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Is there a large American diaspora in Honduras?
Yes.
Oh,
and
I
in
didn't.
Belize. I think more so in Belize,
Well,
but
more
yes,
so
there
in
is
Belize.
more so in Belize. But yes,
That's
but there are
understandable. Yeah,
correct. But
Belize
yes,
is understandable. Yeah.
yeah, because I think they're still kind of considered what they used to call British Honduras.
Right.
But yes, but there is I think more a larger American population in Belize. But yes, but I'm pretty sure that there is quite a large group of Americans that do retire to Honduras.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. I don't know much about the place. I have noticed over the years here at Aaron's Opinion, we have received, um, very few downloads and very few listeners from Latin American countries and Spanish speaking countries in that region. So I've always wondered what that's about. And I think you're very right that it's just, and you said it very well. No, I don't mean this in a bad way either, but I think that people in that part of the world, some of them know what podcasts are, but a lot of them probably don't. And a lot of them are not as aware of podcasting and YouTube and are just not as connected, unfortunately. I have noticed that consistently. Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, correct. 'Cause I mean, a lot of them may not know the technology or, because it's just, there is just so much poverty there.
There is Noe, but the strange thing is that I've also noticed that I have a lot of listeners from countries in Africa, countries in Western Africa. We have a
Oh,
lot of
wow.
people in South Africa. Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, okay. Now here's the interesting part, and I think it's about I don't fully understand it. I've noticed that countries in Africa, on the continent of Africa, have actually been developing. They do podcasting now. They do YouTube. They have all sorts of social media. So there are developing countries that are listening to podcasts. It just seems like the Latin American countries and the Western European countries actually listen the least. And I've always wondered why. Why is that really? Is what I've wondered.
They,
Yeah.
they may just not know what's out there, or, only may know what's in their immediate area. I don't know.
Yeah. It's very interesting.
Because
Of course,
unfortunately,
me not speaking Spanish doesn't is one that I only do English and French. So obviously, I attract an audience of people who speak English and French. So that's
sure,
part of it. Yeah.
sure. Oh yeah, no,
Hmm.
definitely. Yeah, I would agree
Yeah.
with you on that. And also I think just that, I think if you are blind, I don't think that there are a lot of resources in Honduras,
Hmm.
for people who are blind, from what I've heard. So that may be a part of it as well, where they're just not aware of, what's out there in terms of technology and just how to get services, because they don't have any type of government help. They don't have agencies, you know, for the blind, or any type of social services or anything there. It's, you work for what you have, and there, unfortunately, there is not a whole lot of government help, but there may be now. So I mean, I'm not saying there
Yeah.
is there's none, but
Who
um,
knows?
yeah,
Who knows? Considering none of them talk to me on Aaron's Opinion, considering none of them like the post, I don't know. Nobody knows what goes on down in those. Nobody knows what happens in those countries. Really,
exactly,
nobody really
exactly.
can tell. It's a
Yep,
very mysterious thing. Yeah.
yep.
So when you were at Florida State, you started studying their vision program. Why don't you walk us through? Since I'm so happy that you studied that at that time period, why don't you walk us through some of the things that you learned and some of the classes that you remember the most at
Um,
Florida State, because that's a lot of fun.
yeah, that was a lot of work, a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I had a lot of friends to help me through the program. As a matter of fact, I'm still friends with a couple of classmates that were a couple of years ahead of me, at Florida State. We had classes on Braille, which, since I've learned Braille, as a young kid, did very well with that. So that was great. We had classes on, just different disabilities. We had classes on, I'm trying to remember, there was so many now. Of course, orientation and mobility. That was a lot of fun. Just of course, uh, a lot of the, like prerequisites, like, you know, psychology, and, just, all your prerequisites uh, before you actually start going into the actual field that you're going to be going into. So there were just a bunch of different classes, different professors, different teaching styles. So it was a lot of work, but it was fun.
That's good. That's good. So after you get done with the prerequisites, what were some of the courses that you had to take that are like in the core curriculum that vision teachers needed to learn in in the 90s? Yeah. Hmm.
Well, one is an intro to vision, where they talk about different visual disabilities, like, like different eye conditions. They they talk about how to well in intro to Braille, you learn basically what a TVI does to order the books and supplies for the students. Basically, how to make things accessible. So there's intro to vision, there's intro to O&M, um, and trying to think of so long ago now. Um, those are really the only two that stick out in my mind now. But then again, we're talking, almost 20 years ago.
Sure.
So,
Absolutely. Hmm. Yeah. So when you were taking these classes, learning about the eyes and learning about vision loss and visual disabilities, do you recall, Noe, do you remember how did the professors portray blind people? How were blind people portrayed in these classes during the 90s?
well, I had a major professor who had worked with a lot of blind students as well, and she was very good about basically portraying blind people in a very real sense, if you will. They're just the only difference is they can't see and you can type of attitude of, you're going to make adaptations for this blind student, and it's up to you to, figure out a way to make, or not make, but it's up to you to help that student understand whatever concept, if you need to, reinvent the wheel, well, and you reinvent the wheel and you do it in such a way where, okay, when they put their hands on something, they'll understand what it is that teacher is trying to explain to them. It's up to you to make that adaptation, for that student, because you're going to have teachers that will not, unfortunately, step up to the plate and go the extra mile for that student because they have no idea. They've never been, around a blind person. And
Right.
so, you have to just be ready, willing, and able, be flexible to, you know, figure out how to adapt what it is that your student needs.
Exactly. Yes, exactly right. The reason why I brought this all up is because this is, the way blind people are portrayed in universities and in classes can be quite problematic. And then, yes, you do have many teachers, unfortunately, as you know, probably by how much time you spend on Facebook, many teachers of the visually impaired are doing amazing work. And then others are, to put it very mildly and very gingerly, other teachers are just sort of along for the ride. And it's becoming a bigger and bigger problem, you know. My theory is because I've seen so many posts all over Facebook, and I'm sure you have too, where they say the parent says, "Oh, my child came home today and says, my teacher doesn't know Braille," and things like that, and that this is quite a serious problem these days. Have you seen many of these posts? And
I have
um,
not. I have not.
well,
Unfortunately, I'm not. Yeah, no.
that's
Unfortunately,
good.
yeah,
Yeah.
no. Unfortunately, I'm not. I'm not on Facebook as much as I should. But I'm surprised that a lot of vision teachers aren't, or TVI, sorry, are not learning Braille. And I don't know. I mean, but I think the reason though is that a lot of, not schools, but a lot, I think students now are doing so much more with computers and audio that they're not learning Braille, which in my opinion, I think you need to learn Braille, because what if you have a eye condition where it's going to be progressive, and, little by little, you're going to end up losing your vision, or,
Hmm.
you lose your vision for whatever reason. You need to have Braille. You need to have sort of a backup, because you don't want to wake up one day. I'm not going to say you're going to wake up one day and, oh, I can't see, I'm fine. You know, I just grab the cane and put one foot in front of the other. No, but at least if you know Braille, you have some way of communicating. You can read. You're not totally just out in left field without any type of communication, or any way to read or any way to write. So I'm really surprised that a lot of the TVIs don't know Braille, or even if they do learn Braille, I think a lot of them may not be using it as much as they could.
Yeah.
Because the teachers that I've had and my friends who I was um, telling you about before, that the ladies that were a few years ahead of me in school, um, one of them to this day can read Braille just as well as she can read print visually. And she uses Braille all the time in her work because she does a lot of work for a an organization that does a lot of the uh, brailing and adaptations for statewide exams and materials for other states for uh, children who are blind. So I mean, she knows Braille like the back of her hand, and she's fully sighted. And so no, I think Braille is a great resource to just kind of have as a backup if you're not going to use it uh, primarily. I mean, I in my line of work with customer service, I use JAWS and I use Braille, and I find Braille to be invaluable because it really does help the call flow a lot easier. I'm not having to stop and wait and listen to JAWS to catch up. It's like, no, I have a Braille display right there. So I'm giving the information to a customer, letting them know A, B, C, D, and E, and I'm reading A, B, C, D, and E in Braille so that I'm just, reading it right along without even, there's no, you know, pause in the call, or I'm having to, go, well, hang on, it'll be wait for JAWS, and, you don't have that. It's just very seamless.
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely agree with you. Blind children definitely need to be learning Braille because mainly because it's something that you just have to learn. It's just part of it should be just part of what part of the education and just part of being blind is being fluent in Braille is what I think. It's just part of the experience. Yeah, whether you use it a lot or not, you still have to have fluency. And although people say Braille is not a language, well, I actually argue that it sort of is a language for blind people in a sense.
Oh,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yep,
But
absolutely.
that's all very interesting. And then after you took all these interesting classes at Florida State, why did you start working as a TVI in any of the schools, and then you transitioned to,
I didn't actually. I graduated, and right after graduation, pretty much, well, what was interesting is I had not learned JAWS when I was at Florida State. I was using
right.
window eyes and just using Braille and just, I mean, I would literally, excuse me, I would literally take a laptop into the classroom, and I would just literally just type notes verbatim, and I would go home and, you know, emboss them, in Braille, and then just, read them and, just study that way. And then I had books on tape, and I had readers, and, all that. So, I didn't have that kind of technology. I had, window eyes and vocal eyes, but I still was not as proficient with them as I probably could have been. So when I graduated in '98, I learned JAWS. I went to our local lighthouse and, learned JAWS, and then just started looking for work. And then a customer service position came open, and I just jumped on it and just went from there. So
Good.
that's how that all started.
That sounds good. And then what did you find about customer service? Did you find that it's hard at first, easy? How would you describe it? I hear a lot of blind people want to get into customer service. So what can you really say about customer service?
Customer service is good, but I think what really will make you or break you is if you work with the right group of people, if you have the right support for your technology, if you have a supervisor or manager who will, work with you and basically help you evolve and, um, you know, give you the tools to be able to, be successful in your job. But really what I think it comes down to is the technology, the systems that they use in the different companies, as long as they are up to date, as long as they are, for the most part accessible, because I mean, no system is perfect, but as long as they're accessible enough for you to be able to do your job. And, in working with these different programs, you find all kinds of fun workarounds to just, get the information and, just kind of develop your own pattern of finding what you need, to be able to give the information to the, to the caller when they're asking you for something. And there are going to be limitations. So, if, I
Right.
certainly have them. So, but I certainly know, but I have the right people to ask and get the help that I need, and you know, go through the call.
Yeah, excellent. So are you able, now that you're working for the Department of Water, are you able to work from home some days, or is it the type of thing where you have to go into an office setting?
I prefer to go into the office setting because I enjoy the socialization. And well, I did work from home for quite a while, especially with COVID. Um, once we were on lockdown, then we were literally on lockdown, and was working from home, and that was fine. And I actually enjoyed that for a while. And then little by little, they were transitioning us to go into one office, and then we just literally just moved last year into an office that's a lot closer to where I live. So in terms of paratransit, it made the commute a lot easier. So I'm like, but they gave me the opportunity to either work a couple of days from home and work in the office. I'm like, you know what? I'll go in the office full time, which is fine. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of people that have had a hard time working in offices ever since they got used to working from home during the pandemic. Yeah. This has been a big problem for a lot of people.
oh, sure.
Hmm. Okay. And what can you tell us about, or what would you like to share about the Department of Water, and like what does that involve? Living in Florida, by the way, I know that water is a very important matter. So what can you tell us about
Oh
that?
yeah. Well, I think water is an important matter in whatever state
Well,
you're in, because
every
we all
state,
need
that's definitely
water.
true.
Exactly. Well, what I basically do is start service, and move service. Like if you're moving from one address to another, I would help you, stop your service on one date, start your service on another, and go from there. It's, our system, we've had a lot of changes. We've had a lot of changes in management, a lot of changes in just, um, technology and just different systems from over the years. But it's a very good department to work for. I've had very good managers, and um, the one good thing is that they let you do your job. They let you, if you've you know make an error or something, they'll pull you aside and just very professional. Okay, hey, A, B, and C, D, and E happened. Remember, blah 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 blah, and just that's it. Not a when it come down, you like a ton of bricks, and that type of, so it's all very very professional, very just straightforward, and um and because unfortunately you do have a lot of companies where they do micromanage and just about measure every you know living breathing second that you're in the building, and that can be a bit much. But with us, we're pretty flexible, as long as you don't do anything outlandish, like be away from your desk for like 20 minutes at a time or something crazy, and as long as you abide by your schedule, and just if something happens, let someone know, and just as long as you're accountable for your time and for what you do, and they pretty much just let you do your job and go from there. So it's pretty smooth.
Really good. Really good.
Yep.
Well, that's now, how many other blind people are you working with at the Department of Water?
I work with one other person. I actually trained this one gentleman who moved out from California a couple of years ago, and so I've trained him on the systems that we use, and he also uses Braille. And it was a great opportunity to training, because I had never done it before, and so that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. Very different. So it was good. Um,
That's good. So you were able to use both your educational background and your customer service background in that case. So that's why it's good to have
Correct.
a
Hmm.
diverse background. That's really cool. Really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Really good. And what are some things you can tell me about this department? It's a growing department, right? It's getting bigger, and your
It is
agency
definitely
is
getting
getting big.
bigger. Yeah, it is
Yeah.
definitely getting bigger. Yeah, we're always expanding, in terms of management, in terms of customer service. I mean, it's definitely getting bigger because um, Florida, of course, is always growing. Everybody wants to move to Florida. And, people are moving here from all other states. So, um, but the county is very good in terms of their benefits, what they offer. You know, pay isn't bad. It's not the worst, but it's not. It's kind of in between, but it's okay. Um, but no, a lot of good benefits, and like I said, depending on the department that you're in, with the county, I mean, it's just um, there's a lot of great benefits there.
Absolutely. So you start out making a certain salary, obviously, but then over time you make more and more money over time as you move up in the system. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, we get a annual merit raise each year based on your performance, and then not each year, every 3 months or so, they do like a performance on how you've done over the past 3 months, and then that all gets factored into your performance at the end of the year. Excuse me, and then based on that, you get anywhere between a 3 to 4% merit raise, and so it's not bad. And
That's a lot. Yeah. If you think about it, I mean, the number four doesn't sound big, but when it's about a salary, that's massive. That's quite significant. A 4% raise if you do really well. That's a huge motivation. Yeah. Hmm.
oh yeah, especially with now with the cost of living and everything. I mean, it's not enormous, but I mean, it's definitely enough to it helps. So it's just like they say, every little bit helps.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Really, really good. Okay. Okay. Are you planning on working for any other departments or sections in the future?
Um, right now I'm pretty happy where I am. A lot of other departments, I don't know how their systems would work with JAWS or with Braille. So right now I'm kind of in the mindset of, if it's not broke, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Just stick with what you got, what you know, and just go from there.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Really good. Really good. Now, how are you spending your free time? What are some of your hobbies? Obviously, listening to podcasts is one of them
So,
because as I said at the beginning of the conversation, I had always heard of the name. I saw the name Noe Villeda around, around the various lists, but I didn't know that person listened to podcasts. So how long have you been an avid podcast consumer, by the way?
I've just started actually getting into it, kind of on and off, because I know a
Hmm.
couple of other people that also do podcasts, and I've kind of been following them just, here and there. And, then when I found your podcast, I was like, oh, I'll give it a shot. And, the fact that, it was for a mutual friend, I was like, oh, you know what? Even better, even more motivation to
Cool.
check it
So
out.
you saw the episode with Rod, but in other words,
Correct.
did Rod send it to you personally,
Yes,
or did
he
you?
did.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
he did.
that's how you noticed
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
I see.
Oh,
I
yeah.
see. Very good.
hmm
That's very, very encouraging. That's wonderful. Yeah. And what was that other podcast you listened to in addition to what we do?
Um, that was going to be one of yours. The other ones, I think I had listened to some ACB podcasts by
Oh yeah.
a bunch of different ACB uh, bits members that have been doing other podcasts and stuff on there. So I'd never really gotten a whole lot into it, but now that
Mm-hmm.
I have, I think I'm probably going to really start getting into them a lot more and really just you know checking out different ones and different people. And there's so much great information out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. The other thing you'll get used to in the podcast space is that the space is saturated with many, 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 many it's just a never ending cycle of
Well,
many
yeah.
podcasts and never ending choices.
hmm
And then if you go back to Aaron's opinion, you can see all the other things we've done, all the other
Oh,
people we've
sure,
interviewed. And
sure,
it's a
sure.
never ending cycle. It truly is the hobby and spectrum of podcasting, the scope of it really kicked off during the pandemic is when it really was
Oh,
going
I'm
on.
sure I can imagine.
So
Sure.
that's when this started. That's how Aaron's opinion was started. It was
Nice.
started during the pandemic,
Oh, wow.
and that's how long we've been going. So about five
Wow.
years.
Nice.
Yeah. And it takes that long for an episode to get to you. And that just goes to show you how wide basically the plane of the span of podcasts are. They're all over the place.
Oh, sure.
Because before, and you know this with your IT background too, before very recently, 20 years ago, podcasting would have been a major undertaking. You can't just
Oh,
do it from your
absolutely. Oh, yeah.
house.
I mean, 20 years ago, we had, bulletin boards. We had, you know, CompuServe and, all that, you could, download music. You can do different platforms. I mean, you had just a whole bunch of, I mean, now all that's changed.
Yeah, yeah, everything is easier now.
Oh,
Everything is
yeah.
more accessible, and that's
Sure.
good.
Yeah.
Except for the fact that you factor in now that anybody can get into this space. So because of that, there's too many choices, which is one of the problems, and one of the blessings too is that there's too much to choose from, so you can never stop learning about it. It's a
That's true.
constant.
Absolutely. Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's very interesting. Outside of ACB and Aaron's opinion, do you listen to like other podcasts just outside of the blindness scope? Just other, do you have like other interests?
Um, like I said, I really haven't gotten much into podcasting,
I
so I really
understand.
need to find others. I know that, for example, I like to read, and one of the authors I like to read is J.D. Robb. She writes the Dallas In-Depth series, and I know that there was a podcast based on that, and I was listening to that for a little bit, and it was okay. It wasn't too bad. It was kind of interesting that they would talk about the different books and the different characters, and they would give their opinions on what happened in book three with whatever and blah blah blah. So that was kind of an interesting perspective on each book and just on all the characters within that storyline.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Right.
but oh
Sure.
yeah, I mean, there's so much information out there.
Sure. Yeah, we're completely immersed in information now. Yeah, around the clock. So good. So you like books? What are some of your other hobbies outside of podcasting that you like to do?
Um, well, aside from reading, hanging out with friends, love music, love all kinds of music.
Mm-hmm.
Been collecting music for years, and now of course with digitally. Um, I used to have a bunch of tons of albums and CDs and all that, and which is great. But now, a lot of them been able to basically restart my collection again on as MP3s, so it makes it a lot more convenient. And
Right.
so, but yeah,
Yeah,
it's
really,
been a
really
yeah.
good. Really, really good. Yeah, that's all really, really interesting. I'm sure that you at this point have a lot of questions for me, Aaron Richmond, and Aaron's opinion. So, and I hope and know, and I'm sure that you will go back through our catalog as you get to know more of our episodes over time, and as you get to know the other podcasters who are around our network here at Aaron's Opinion, are
Oh
basically our
sure.
big family.
Oh yeah.
One of the things is you'll hear about other podcasts that we have interviewed who are also doing great stuff. Do you like, just to plug one that they do great stuff? Do you know about, do you listen to like a lot of radio stuff? Do you like learning about radio stations and what's going on in radio?
It's funny that you say that because when I was
Mm-hmm.
um, when I was when I was a kid, when I had moved here from New York, before I started going to Florida State, I had a bunch of stereo equipment. I had a pyramid mixing board. I had a turntable. I had a CD player. And what I would do is I would actually create my own versions of my own extended versions of songs. Like I would, set it in such a way where I could, loop the chorus, loop the intro, or add reverb to, wherever. So I mean, I've always been a huge, huge, huge fan of music production, and I've always wanted to get into music production, which is one of the conversations that Ron and I've had for many, 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 many times. I've always told him I'd love to, you know, watch him, sit behind his keyboard and actually see how he produces his music and his albums, and just all the work that goes into it. Because I've always been
Yeah.
fascinated by just the behind the scenes work of that. And now the fact that you can do that now with like programs like Audacity and Goldwave and just all kinds of fun stuff like that. So yeah, I've always been a big admirer of sound production, and like I'll listen to different artists and stuff, and just kind of check out how they use the different effects, and I've always been fascinated by that.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun.
It
And
is
we're able to create all sorts of noises and sound effects.
exactly
That's
yes,
super cool. When it's done properly, it's great.
correct. Oh yeah, no, exactly, because there's such a thing where you can just overdo it, and you have
That's also a problem when it's overdone. It's not as
correct.
noticeable.
No,
Yeah.
it just really just takes away from the original. You've had songs where they overdo certain parts, and it's like, okay, was that really necessary? It's like, like I said, a little goes a long way. But
Mm-hmm.
it's like anything, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. So
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, that's really fascinating. And Rod can definitely show you how he
absolutely,
produces his music and, things like that. So the
sure.
more you have an interest, the more you'll learn
Oh yeah,
about it. Yeah. Yeah. Well, really, really excellent. And so, what are some questions you want to ask me? Some deeper, as I say,
How did
I
you
always
get
like
into
to
podcasting?
say, yeah, how did I get into podcasting? Yeah, well, I was someone who, as I said, I was born in 91 and I was born blind and with a congenital heart defect. So I was
Okay.
immersed in audio from day one.
Nice.
My whole childhood, much of it was spent going back and forth to various hospitals for my parents
Okay.
to provide me with care. I have
Sure.
had quite a medical history,
Oh my
especially when I
goodness.
was a little guy.
Sure.
And throughout our time, we lived most of my childhood, actually the majority of my childhood and most of my young adult life was spent in Maryland.
Okay.
And we drove back and forth to Hopkins and other
Mm-hmm.
hospitals around the area for care many
Sure.
times during my life. So my
Mm-hmm.
whole life was spent then absorbing audio that my parents were playing on the car radios, whether they
Nice.
were conservative talk show hosts of the day or music or so
Sure.
my whole brain was kind of set up to absorb audio content.
Nice. Nice.
And everybody's different. I'm someone who really was drawn to it. You know, everybody would say it's a stereotype. Oh, blind people love audio. Yeah,
No,
well,
no, no,
maybe
no, no, no,
it,
no,
it
not at all.
depends. It depends on the blind person. But
It really does.
in my case, I was drawn to it. And
Nice.
then as a teenager, I listened to audiobooks. So then I
Yeah.
always understood narration. And then I also have a fixation with YouTube and how there's a lot of narration style videos, scary stories. I love horror stories on YouTube and things like that, where people
Oh yeah.
tell,
There's,
scary stories and do
yeah.
voice acting and things.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. There's some incredible narrators out there.
Ridiculous narrators, some of
Yeah.
which I've interviewed, others not.
Oh, nice.
I don't know. You'd have to go back and look. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
hard to tell.
Yeah.
Over the 5 years, it's hard. It's a blur who
Oh,
I've come in
of
contact
course.
with and not.
Goodness. Yeah. Yeah.
And then around the time And then Noe, around the time of the pandemic, right at the height of it, I was listening to a lot of podcasts that were marketed for blind people. And one of the things that I noticed was that a lot of these other podcasters were not open to having conversations with me. And I really had a problem with that. As you can tell, I'm someone that just loves to talk. I love to have interactions with people and I really just want to talk to people.
Sure.
And quite
Nice.
frankly, I don't really care if you agree with me. I just want to tell you what my opinion is. I'm one of those guys where I'll talk to anybody who's willing to listen. So
Sure.
I created an environment. I wanted to create an environment where you and so many others can come up to my microphone and share your life story. Simple as that.
Nice.
And then it just sort
Nice.
of, it's been through many iterations and we've redone stuff and changed topics over the years and covered different things and developed different products over the years. But over time, it's just built on one episode out at one thing at one step at a time, and
Sure.
that's
Absolutely.
how we say help one person today, help 1 million people tomorrow, because
Exactly.
this
Yeah.
knowledge that you gave today will be, it's great that you gave it now, but it'll be even better later when somebody needs it. You never know
Oh, you never
when you'll
know.
need that 20 years
No.
from now. They'll look
Oh,
back and they'll say,
you
oh, well,
never
there was
know.
this guy named Noe and he talked about this and he can help you understand
Yeah.
that. It's
Right.
really powerful. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, I've always been a big believer that, you never know who you're going to meet in life and you never know, who can teach you what and, just keep an open mind and, you know, you never know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what else do you want to know?
Um, aside from podcasting, I can't think of what kind of music do you like?
I'm all over the place. When I was younger, I played the flute, classical
Nice.
flute. So I went through a phase where I would only listen to classical music and Baroque music for a while. But
Mm.
over time, as the music scene has changed, I'll listen to anything now, from oldies to goodies
Nice.
to covers. I tell you, the covers that people are coming out with some of these songs that were great 50 and 60 and 70 years ago, all these old fashioned covers now that people are revitalizing are just incredible. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I can think of a couple different artists that have done some incredible jobs and covers.
Have you ever heard of an artist who's blind? He calls himself EJ the Phoenix.
That name sounds vaguely familiar, but I think I've only just kind of heard it in passing, but it sounds familiar.
Yeah, he's been on my show several times. He's an incredible friend. You'll meet
Oh
him in a
wow.
few minutes later tonight when I add you to our groups, to our WhatsApp groups, which I'm glad you're fluent in WhatsApp because much of the connection of Aaron's opinion is through WhatsApp. You'll
Nice.
meet him in a few minutes, but
Okay.
EJ the Phoenix is as I've said, for one thing, he's a ridiculously gifted. He's ridiculously
Wow.
gifted with his
Wow.
music.
Nice.
But what stood out to me about EJ the Phoenix is he's a ridiculously strong and kind and supportive person and friend.
Oh, nice.
So he's one of
Nice.
these people where I say, yeah, I'll listen to you sing. Your singing's great, but I just
Okay.
like talking to you. Quite
Oh, nice.
frankly, the friendship that he presents to people in the community is just stellar. Anyway, the
That's nice.
reason bringing it up, he's a very, oh, and also, he's also a native Spanish speaker like you.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm so, you probably have seen his stuff without noticing, or you've probably
Probably.
heard of him around the community without even, because
That you're more than likely right. Oh,
there's
yeah,
so many
sure.
names that are flying around.
Sure, sure.
He produced, one of his most impressive, or my favorite, it's not necessarily his favorite, but my favorite thing that he ever did. Okay. You know the song Sound of Silence, right?
Sure, of course.
Hello, darkness,
Yep.
my old
My old
friend.
friend, I've come to speak with you again. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is written about one of those musicians becoming blind. Um,
Oh,
yeah. Yeah.
I knew that.
Did you know
I
that that's
never
the
knew
whole
that.
story?
No, I never knew
Yeah.
the story behind it.
That's what they're talking about. They're talking about one of
Oh,
them, either, um, Art or Paul. Um,
really? I never knew
yeah,
that. Oh,
seriously.
wow.
Blind,
Hmm.
no worries. Yeah, but that's
Interesting.
what they're talking about. One of them
Okay.
had, now I don't know what the condition was, so I'm not going to get
Sure.
people confused, but he was
Sure.
losing his vision
Okay.
and that's why he said darkness, because in his
Ah,
mind,
okay.
it was like
Sure.
darkness, and then it was like a friend that he
Sure, sure.
had to customize to. There's a
Sure.
lot
Okay.
of, there's,
That makes, wow.
one of the things that I like to do when I talk music with people is I say, you really have to research the history behind the song because that's really interesting. What was going on in society and why did they write the song when they
No,
did,
that's very
you
true
know?
because I'm somebody who if it's a song that I like or an artist that I like, I pay attention to lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
I pay attention to lyrics, to the different vocal effects, to, you know, what was, um, I don't know, as an example, what was, Trisha Yearwood going through when she wrote the song, or what was, whoever.
Right.
And because no, there's so much more to it than it's not just, oh, I'm just gonna, sit down in front of a mic and sing the song and, pound it on the piano. No,
Mm-hmm.
you don't know the story behind it.
Right, right. Yeah, there's all sorts of fascinating stories, or some of the
Yeah,
most serious songs, or some of the most beautiful songs are written about some of the most serious topics, and that's an example.
sure,
Anyway, to
sure.
circle back, but by the way, the longer you know me, you'll know that one side effect of my medicine is that I do tend to talk a lot. So,
Oh, I have no
so
problem with that. So,
well, good. So to get ourselves back on track. So this EJ the Phoenix guy, he took that song, Sound of Silence,
right.
and he did an interpretation of, it's kind of hard for me to express it to you because it's so beautiful. It's why it's in music,
Okay,
not in conversation.
sure.
The Sound of Silence was then, how do I even express it? It was like recovered or reinterpreted by another musician
Oh,
who
wow.
figured out that if you sing it really slowly and really softly, and you slowly walk up to that big explosive, ending,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
it sounds really good. So
Wow.
what he did, so EJ did a version of that, and let me tell you, he did it in like a club environment. It was at some, I don't know, there's some story behind it.
Sure.
I'll definitely send it to you in WhatsApp.
Oh,
The
nice.
video, the, the video's private because it's unlisted, and it's a
Sure.
video that I had to rescue from him. It was on his hard drive, and he said,
Gotcha.
"Aaron, hold on to this video. I don't know who will love it, but
Nice.
it is the most beautiful version of that song. If anybody sings Sound of Silence, it's got to be EJ the Phoenix. Nobody sings it
Wow.
better.
That's
And
incredible.
he does this
Nice.
really weird. He has this really yeah, I'll just send it to you. I can't describe it. That's how
Yeah, no, no,
beautiful
no,
it
I
was.
got it.
That's how
Nice.
powerful and
Yeah,
bizarre it was. It's so there's
nice.
a lot you can do with music.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's
Sure.
you can take some songs that have been written a long time ago and make them really, really great. If you want to impress anybody, be able to sing Unchained Melody. That's a ridiculous
Oh,
song.
goodness. Yeah. Ooh. Yeah.
And to be able to do the full opera thing in the middle,
Yep.
I mean,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
that'll win any conversation over if you're able to sing that one. That's a
Oh, yeah. I
ridiculously
mean,
hard
some of the
song.
covers of that are just incredible. I mean, I'm like, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you like listening to like Spanish music, like Spanish language music from like Spain or Latin
Um,
America or the famous Latin artists these days? Yeah.
some, I have a couple different artists that I like. A couple that I've followed over the years. Of course, Gloria Estefan and John Cicada.
I've heard the names, not familiar, but
Yeah.
I've heard the names. So I've probably heard the music without realizing it. The names sound very
More than
familiar.
likely, yeah. I mean, you'd know them if you heard them. Very, both have done great work in both English and Spanish,
Mm-hmm.
and but it's interesting because and both of them. I shouldn't say just one, but both of them. It's really interesting because Spanish is, I think, and I could be wrong, but I think that Spanish is their first language, and the only reason why I say it that way is because if you listen to a song that each one has done in English and then you listen to the Spanish version of it, they put so much more feeling into the Spanish version. It's incredible. It's like,
I don't
whoa,
know.
okay.
And I didn't quite catch what you said. You said the song in Spanish. I didn't quite, I missed a
Oh, I'm
word.
sorry. If for example, if you listen to a song that each one has done in English and then you listen to the Spanish version of it, they
Yeah.
put so much more feeling into the Spanish. I mean, the English still sounds good, but there's something about the Spanish version of it um, that they just, I don't know, maybe just
Well, you're probably right. Or it's your first language. So you're able to notice the emotion. You're able to notice the connection more,
possibly. Yeah,
possibly.
it could
But
be.
you very
Yeah,
well could be right. I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
yeah.
I do agree with you that French songs are very emotional, very
Oh,
beautiful
sure.
too. But
Absolutely. Yeah.
the answer is, if you're a really gifted musician, then the song is really brilliant in any language, really, depending
Oh,
on,
yeah.
yeah.
True.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, really good. Really, really good. Well, I think you'll be an incredible contributor here at Aaron's Opinion. I think you know a lot about, I think you'll be able to help us out a lot in the customer service section. And I think you have a lot of IT knowledge and a lot of great knowledge and experiences. And you're just very pleasant. You're just a great guy to talk to. You're very calm too. That's one thing that's very positive about you. You have a very calming effect. And I think that's something that people really need and really like. You aren't really stressful to talk to. You're very relaxed. So
well, thank you. Yeah, definitely.
that's really good. That's really, really good. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Well,
thank you. I'm
cool.
glad I had the opportunity to, be on your show and contribute and
You're
uh,
so welcome.
hopefully, share some information and just, have a good time. So, as you
Absolutely.
say, help one person, help a million.
There you go. You
Yeah.
definitely got it. That's exactly the idea. So as I always like
Okay.
to say, though, if you can ask me only one more question to really make me sweat to see if I'm worth my salt as a podcaster, what do you really want to ask? Hmm.
Let's see. In terms of music, going back to music for a second,
Right.
who would you say would be the one artist that you would just give just about anything to meet in person, and it would either be able to interview or just to meet and shake their hand and say, hey, you know what, I've always been a huge admirer.
That's a very important question to ask. And I think it was either a couple episodes ago. I am going to answer, but I'm going to answer in my way of answering.
Okay.
in my roundabout way of answering. A couple episodes back, we put on an episode where I spoke with Philip Francis Anderson, that British man. Did you listen to that episode?
No, I haven't gotten there yet.
That's fine. He's a British guy. He has a perfect BBC voice. He sounds like he's
Oh,
right
nice.
off BBC.
Oh, very
He has
cool.
this powerful, wise, soothing.
Nice.
Yeah, you should listen to that one.
I'll check that
He's
out.
incredible. It was
Nice.
a couple episodes back, and if you have a hard time
Nice.
finding it, just reach out and let me know, and I'll gladly send it back to you.
Sure.
By the
Okay.
way, do you download on Apple? How do you listen to podcasts? Which player do you use?
I guess I use Apple. I'm not sure. I just
That is. I always find that Spotify is my favorite. I find that Spotify is actually easier to use. That's
is
interesting.
it?
Anyway,
Okay.
much easier.
There you go.
Much
Um,
easier to use, much more
oh, okay.
accessible. I
Oh,
have
good.
found.
Oh, I'll
Now,
have to
I'm
check it out
also
then.
able to use, now to clarify, yes, Apple is great, and I'm able to use Apple Podcasts when I want. But my preference as the blind person is Spotify. I've always had more luck keeping
I'll have
track
to
of
try
stuff.
that because the one thing I could not figure out how to do with Apple was how to actually like a podcast. It gave me all the information about it, gave me all the statistics
Hmm.
and blah blah,
Hmm.
but I could not find a like button. I could figure out how to subscribe to it, how to download it. So I may try Spotify.
Yeah, yeah. I find that the system of Spotify is a little bit more. I think it's just easier to use. Anyway, During this conversation that I had with this British guy who's been on my show a couple of times now, he said something very subtle and very important. And he's studying philosophy and he's an older man, so he likes to make these beautiful, wise points. And he said, and I loved it when he said it. He said, remember, he said, there are many people who spend their life admiring others. And for if we only admire others, the only side effect of admiring other people will be that we never reach what we're supposed to reach at all. And that's a very subtle thing, right?
Wow.
So when you stop and think about that, that's true. You can admire somebody for a moment and say, that's good. But what you really need to do is listen to that person and use what they give you, use the knowledge they give you to help you improve your own life.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's kind of the philosophy. Are there musicians I admire? No, not really. Are there some musicians that are interesting to meet that would be interesting people to meet? Well, and I'm not going to name drop, not because you don't care, but because the majority of the audience would have no idea who the people were. But I've met some of the classical musicians.
Oh, nice.
Some of those people when I was much younger. I've met several of the classical musicians, and they were interesting to me for sure.
Nice.
But the answer is, well, I mean, I have interviewed some other blind musicians from around the world here at Aaron's Opinion, and they're very interesting to meet. I mean, it's hard to say really, because meeting someone one day and then interviewing them another, that's two different experiences.
Sure it is.
Somebody in concert might be a terrible guest on a podcast, or vice versa. Right. Someone who's a great guest on a podcast might get in front of thousands and have stage fright. So you can't, although it would be natural to think, boy, I just went to that concert. Oh, I should get him on the show. Sure. I mean, does that happen sometimes? Yeah, of course. But just because they're doing one job, it doesn't mean they would be a perfect fit for another.
That makes sense.
And actually, I will say, I'll say musicians, and I don't want to say that Rod and did you listen to Dan's episode, the one that comes out?
I have not listened to Dan's yet. I have not. I downloaded it.
I know I'm kind of selling the point here, but you kind of have to listen to these. The only reason I'm telling you, apart from the fact that I love giving you knowledge, Noe, is that Dan kind of goes along with Rod, and you got to listen to that whole story, and then it puts it all together when you have all that knowledge between those two guys. Those two, I mean, you're knowledgeable too, but let me tell you, gosh. If I met Rod, I would have to meet Dan, because I would have to put their knowledge together. I would just get them in a room together. I would get out 3 glasses. I'd pour beer in all of them. I'd say, okay, you guys are just going to talk.
The energy that you would have would be incredible. I actually had the pleasure of meeting both of them last year.
How did you meet both of them?
I went to visit my best friend, and they live nearby. And we all got together for brunch, and I had been, basically friends with Rod for years, and then, met Dan a year or two or so ago. So, we'd all just kind of been, basically friends, and, we chatted back and forth. So it was finally nice to, literally, put a face with a name, and so it was fun. It was fun. We really didn't get a whole lot of chance to hang out too much, because when we met, we were on our way. We were headed back home, so we basically just had time to grab breakfast and then, run to the airport. But I mean, the little time that we did, get a chance to spend, it was fun.
That's so cool.
Very, very funny, very, very down to earth, very, real, very what you see is what you get.
Yeah. Well, just like you, they're very similar. You have a very similar personality, that very relaxed, but very, very present. With both Dan and you and Rod, and you guys are all very similar, actually. And it didn't really occur to me, but you all actually are very similar personalities.
They're very, very charismatic and very just, very upbeat, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Like, okay, let's, we only have an hour, so let's eat, talk, and go at the same time. So it was fun.
No, I would meet those two. And there's most of the people on the podcast I've never met in real life. The vast majority, obviously, because they live far from me, or in some other country, or something like that. But we've had very kind people from other countries who I would say to myself, boy, I would meet that person if they came to some convention. I would meet them for sure in real life. But it's very odd, because we live in a society where we have all these friends, but we've never met. That's kind of weird. Does that weird you out?
Yeah, no, it is.
Do you think that's weird?
Yeah, no, it really is, because, as I've grown older, and it's funny because, just from a younger perspective, because I have a lot of, nieces and nephews, it's like they'll meet somebody and, 5 minutes later, oh, that's my friend. No, that's not a friend. A friend is someone who's, it's like, no, no, like you're young. You're young. It's like, youth is wasted on ... But, no, like that's not a friend. A friend is one who will, see you through thick and thin, through the good, the bad, and,
Or or the other joke that people say, you can only tell that someone's your friend when they help you move. The people who help you
isn't that
move
the
are your
truth?
friends.
Isn't that the truth? Exactly.
Yeah,
When you,
that's the joke.
or when
Yeah.
you, need a objective ear or shoulder to listen to, and, somebody to blow you off. Oh, I got a text, I gotta go, type of, but yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's just funny.
It is very funny. Or the other one is where people say that they've been and I know a lot of people say this when they say like, oh, I've got a boyfriend, girlfriend, I've been in this relationship for this many years, and then I wonder, well, have you met him? And then they would say, well, no, but we're sure.
Yeah. Okay. Good luck with that.
Yeah, yeah. But that's also a side effect of social media and social
No, that's
advancement,
correct. Well,
So
that's
to
correct.
some
But
extent, I can't fully blame
yeah.
that, but
Well, yeah. But that's a whole nother novel. So
that's
exactly.
a whole nother discovery. Absolutely.
Exactly.
So Noe, if someone wants to get in touch with Noe Villeda, apart from just watching your name appear on email lists, which your name does appear on those, how can they get in touch with a Noe Villeda if somebody wants to get in touch? Yeah.
I am part of your Facebook group through Aaron's Opinion.
Oh, you are. Oh,
Yes,
great.
and
Excellent.
part of the WhatsApp group as well. I'm on all different kinds of lists, and I'm on, the iPhone and just all kinds of different lists. And so I'm around.
Excellent.
So,
Really good. So then did you join our public WhatsApp group?
yes,
Oh,
yes, I
you
did.
did. Oh, excellent.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Well, good. Good. I was going to send you those links. I'll send you the private one and then that's interesting. I confess I didn't notice that you joined that one. That's actually
Or actually, you
interesting.
know what? I don't know. I may be part of it. I don't know. I know I'm part of one of them. Because
Well,
I
see,
saw a post.
so, okay, the post one, that was probably, okay, it's probably the Facebook group, which has the same name as the WhatsApp. So I'll in a few minutes later tonight, I'll give you two links in your WhatsApp, one to the private WhatsApp group, and then there's a public WhatsApp community that I've developed for a way.
That one I am definitely a part of. It's a WhatsApp community one. That's one I couldn't think of, but I don't know that I'm part of the private one.
Ah, okay. So
I don't know.
this is cool. So you took the time to look up the name of the WhatsApp community. That's cool. Okay. Well, good. Well, really good.
hmm
I wonder when did you join that one?
Um, I'm trying to think.
Huh.
I think you may have sent me that when I commented about your podcast last week.
You know what? My mistake. You're correct because you said okay. Now I have to push rewind and push play. Okay, rewind it right here. You're right. You're the person that said that. Okay, I remember now. It was quite an equation. You reached out on Messenger saying how much you enjoy. I know this is kind of weirding you out, but
No, 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 no.
I'm sure you understand that
Yeah,
dealing
no,
with everything I deal, all the
no, no,
guests,
no,
it's
no, no.
all,
You've got too much going on. Please, no.
it's like a musical cacophony
No,
of
of
all the
course it is. No, no,
conversations.
absolutely yes.
Yeah,
Oh
you
no,
reached out. Now it just popped back now it all clicked back into place. You reached out on Messenger saying how much you
correct.
enjoyed the conversation with Rod. Then at the
Correct.
bottom you said, here's my number. Hey, by the way, can you add me to your WhatsApp community?
That's what it was, because
That's how you
I
found
didn't
out.
know how to, find your group on WhatsApp.
Right.
And I tried to join I know what it was. I couldn't find the Facebook group, and then I finally found it
Right.
and joined it on
Right.
Facebook. But it was the private WhatsApp group that I think I may be a part of. I don't even know. I think I am though, but
I'll take a closer later tonight. I'll
yeah,
take a closer look and figure that out. Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's very magical. That's super cool that you did it and
yeah,
super good. And, yeah,
yeah.
people come and go. And,
No, they
being
really
that I'm
do.
the admin, the other thing with the WhatsApp groups is people come and go very quickly.
Oh,
So,
sure, sure.
you got people that dart in, dart out, and left and right and things like
Oh
that.
yeah.
But welcome aboard.
Well,
Absolutely.
thank you,
If you
thank you,
took the
thank you.
initiative to be in the public community, that's good. Now that's a public group. You have to be aware.
Correct.
Then
Oh
there's
yeah.
a private group that's obviously for the other guests, and that's where you'll really be able to connect with
Yes.
everybody. But absolutely, so they can send you a message there. What are some other ways they can get in touch with you?
Well, my email address is just my name, which is NOE, V as in Victor, ILL, E as in Echo, D as in David, A as in Adam, at Verizon.net.
All right. Well, excellent. Noe Villeda, great to have you on, and I'm sure we'll have many, many wonderful conversations around the Aaron's Opinion
Thank
family.
you so much. Definitely look forward to it. Keep up the great work.
Well, thank you so much, man. Well, we'll connect in a few minutes a little later.
That sounds good.
But so good to connect with you. And
You
until
too.
next
Take care.
time, we always like to say, help one person today, help 1
Help
million
1 million
people.
tomorrow.
You got it, man.
Exactly.
All right, everybody, take care. Have a great night. Bye.